All right. So till yesterday we discussed what? We discussed about automation testing. We discussed something about testing, something about installations, right? Um, we discussed briefly about some testing concepts here and there. Then we also talked about HTML, which you guys I just showed you. I didn't really talk about it. I just showed you. You guys have to do some pre-reading on your own before we actually start with the introduction of HTML later when we actually start Selenium. So HTML part I want you guys to read on your own for now until we actually start with it later. But today, for today's session, I'm going to start with Java, and we will be creating our first Java program. I will be talking about how to start creating a project. There could be different two kinds of project usually you can create. One is plain Java project. Second is your Maven project. So I'm going to talk about both. Why we are doing this is, as you know, we cannot do any automation unless you have a good background on Java. So first few sessions will be devoted in introduction of Java, how to create projects, how to write programs, what is classes, objects, inheritance, loops, if conditions, etc., etc., etc. So all of this is something which we have to do first before we even think of moving on to the actual automation testing stuff. Okay, now before I start, I actually need some information from you guys. Can you tell me, is there anyone who has just never worked on Java? Can you if I mean, you can just ping, basically it's okay, or you can just, because in Zoom you have some buttons, yes, no, or tick mark. I mean, choose yes or no. Just a show of hand is also okay. If you have never worked on it, then say no. If you have worked on it, then say yes.
No.
Okay, okay, can you please use the Zoom yes and no button, which will be displayed in your participants area, or rather at the bottom. I think it should show as a bottom yes, no, or something like that. As I said, I am not really a PPT person. I don't like you guys to be, or I sitting here and talking about PPTs. However, I have PPTs. I will be talking about it, but I will rather focus more on the practical aspects of things, right? Having said that, I still need to explain some basics before I actually open Eclipse and start showing you things. So let me just quickly walk you through this PPT which I have here, and then I'll just jump onto an Eclipse as well as IntelliJ. I'll try to talk about how to create projects in both the IDEs. So till yesterday we did talk about installations. After you do installation, so first installation you need to do is your JDK Java Development Kit. It's also called as JDK Java Development Kit. This is what you need to install if you want to become a developer of a Java code. When you write a Java code, it needs compilation, and after compilation it gets executed. So to do that compilation, you need JDK, also called a Java Development Kit. Now to run that converted code, also called as bytecode, you need JRE, Java Runtime Environment. Java Runtime Environment is what executes your code. But where does it execute it? It doesn't execute the code on your system. It executes the code on a virtual machine which is on top of your system. It's called a JVM, Java Virtual Machine. So this is the relationship between JDK, JRE, and JVM. Okay. As you see here, JDK converts source code to bytecode. What is source code? What you write in your IDE is a source code. When you say compile, it gets converted to the bytecode. Bytecode is then sent to JRE for execution, and JRE sends it to JVM, and that's where it gets executed. Once it gets executed there, it returns the results to JRE JDK. Sorry, not JDK. It returns the result to JRE, and JRE provides you some form of console, and you sees the results there. Okay, so that is the relationship between JDK, JRE, and JVM. You always would need JDK to compile the code. If you only want to run it, then you will use JRE. Something like you want to run your code, so sorry, you want to write a code, create a software, you will install JDK, you will write the code and compile it. Then let's say your father wants to run it, then the father doesn't need to download JDK because he don't want to compile or write code. So what you will do, you will ask him to install JRE, then you will send your code, converted code to him. He can then execute it on his machine because your father would have JRE on his system. So idea is simple. JDK is for compilation, JRE is for execution, but both has JVM. So when you install JDK, JRE and JVM comes with it. When you install JRE, JDK doesn't come with it, only JRE and JVM. But JVM is comes with both. Without JVM, you cannot run Java code. That's what it's make. Java is also called platform independent because the code runs on JVM. It has its own machine where it could execute the code. So it doesn't matter you running where are you creating your code. You're creating a code in Windows, but you can run it on same setups. Everything would be same, nothing would be changed if you run it on Linux or Mac. That's what is called as platform independent. Okay. I'll move next. Then we have a concept of classes and objects. So as you know, Java is an object oriented programming language, and object oriented programming language has some principles on which it is built. uh, I think you have heard of it if you're from computer background, or even if you're not from computer background, if you are from, I think it's pretty basic, which usually gets covered in your college, even if you're not from the computer background. Still, I think these kind of things you might have heard. For example, encapsulation, polymorphism, abstraction, inheritance, right? These kind of things you might have heard about, at least if you're not expert in it, it's fine. But these are very very fundamental pillars of object or any object oriented programming language. Now, to design the program in any of the object oriented programming language, there's a concept called as classes and objects. Everything revolves around these two things, classes and objects. So you write your code in a structure. The structure is called as classes. Then you instantiate the class to create an object. An object, in the object you call the methods which gets triggered and do the job. So idea is, I'll again try to reiterate. The idea is you create classes. Inside classes, you create two things. One, you add the attributes or variables, and second, you add the behaviors, or also called as methods. So a class is made up of attributes and methods, and if you want that class to do something, you have to first instantiate it. And once you instantiate it, that means you have created an object out of it. Once you create the object out of it, you will invoke the method on it, and that's what happens, and that's how the code gets executed. A simple analogy is here. You see car, my car, Benz, Ferrari, Peter's Porsche, right? Car is a class, and what you see here is an instantiation of the class called as car. So car is a, you can say, is a generic word, it's a concept. But Benz, Ferrari, or actual Maruti 800 or BMW, right? They are actual instantiation of the class called as car, right? So this is the relationship. Same thing here. Person is a concept, a plain concept, a blueprint, in some sense a prototype. To If you instantiate it, create an object out of it, it becomes a unique entity. That's what we call object. Okay. So this is the basically two different relationship between these two. Now, as I promised, I will not be boring you with all this theory. I'll straight away jump to my IDE and start showing you things so that you can actually relate it. But before I do that, just one last slide called as inheritance, because this is also what I'm going to show you today itself. So the idea behind this is a class and the next another class. Maybe let's say you're creating two classes. The two classes usually can have a relationship, right? So there are relationships between different entities and classes which we can establish when we write code. No matter what kind of language you use, no matter what kind of code you're writing, there always can be relationships between multiple classes. There always is a relationship, I should say. Without relationships, your code doesn't actually interact. You have to have a relationship. Relationships can be of different types. They are compositions, associations. Inheritance is the most common type. Now, what inheritance is, as name suggests, one class is a parent, one class is a child. So if this child class, if there is a class which inherits something from another class, we say it is having a has a relationship or inheritance relationship, right? Or type, I beg your pardon, it's actually type of, right? So if I say class A and class B, and class B is a type of class A, I would say this is a inheritance relationship, right? And there's a way in Java to establish it. All right, enough talk. Let me start with the actual thing to show you guys how things really work. So please pay attention. If you have opened your laptop, you can also try to do the same which I'm talking. While I'm doing it, you can also try to do the same. If not, you can just hear patiently and then later try. Anyway, this is a recorded session. I'm going to post it. So when you actually do it, you can run the video and do it in your system and check the step by step. Check the video, do step by step. I think you will be good. I will try to be very elaborate I'll go and create the projects and talk about the concepts. Okay, so let's begin. So let me first show you this with the Eclipse, because I think most of you will be using Eclipse. So let me first show you this with Eclipse. So I have this version of Eclipse. This I think is the latest version. Once you open the, I'm assuming you have installed Java. If you have, when I say Java, I mean JDK. If you want to make sure if you have Java in your system, you need to run something like this, Java version. It should give you something. Okay. If it's not giving you anything, that means Java is not installed, and JDK is not installed, Java is not installed. Your Eclipse will also not run. So Eclipse requires JRE to be to execute itself. Now, once you open the Eclipse, you will get something like this. That means it will ask you to create or select a workspace. Now, what is the workspace? Workspace is nothing but a folder, right? So Eclipse has this tendency, or rather any IDE has its tendency to create all the project inside a centralized folder. However, it is not necessary for you to write all your projects inside the same workspace, but it's advisable, because otherwise your projects will be scattered here and there. So the idea is you choose a folder. For example, in my case, this is the folder Eclipse workspace, where it actually go and whatever I will do inside that Eclipse, everything will go inside and get saved in the Eclipse workspace. As I said, there's no rocket science. It's simple folder where the Eclipse will create more folders representing every project. Once I do this, I click on launch. By the way, you don't have to type it out. It will all automatically be there. There's a default workspace which it creates, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Once I do this, then the Eclipse will be opened. For you, if you're doing it for the first time, you will see something like uh, you will see some welcome screen, I think welcome page, something like that. Doesn't matter. All you have to go is to go click on Project Explorer. You have to come here to Project Explorer. Let me come. Let me make my console better, my views better. Okay, so you have to go to Project Explorer. Once you go to Project Explorer, you will see nothing there, because if you're doing it for the first time, you won't see anything. Now you have to create a project. Now, for creation of the project, there are two ways. One way is simple plain Java object, sorry, simple plain Java project, and second is Maven project. So I'm going to talk about Java project first, and then I'm going to show you Maven project. Okay. So if you want to create a project, you have to first go to File. You will have to go to New, and you have to click on uh, a Java project. If you don't see a Java project, you go to Other, type there Java, and you will see something like this. Okay. So click on Java project. Then this window will show up. You have to enter the name of the project. So I'll say my first Java project, because this actually is our first Java project, right? And then you don't have to touch anything else. Don't touch anything else. Don't play around. It is by default has set a lot of things on its own, so you don't have to touch and do anything. You can go to next. Here also you have to touch nothing. Just click on finish. Right, once you do that, it will ask something like this. You can select create, don't create. It's something to do with modules and all. Don't worry too much. I'll just simply say don't create. Then it will ask something about this open perspective. Perspective is just what kind of windows you want Eclipse to open. It will say, or it is saying because this is a Java project, so it is suggesting. Then since this is a Java project, open the Java perspective. As I say, perspective is nothing but a views. What kind of windows, like Project Explorer, Outline, Task. You see these are perspectives. What kind of widgets, sub widgets you want Eclipse to create automatically open for you is what it is trying to ask. You say open perspective. Okay, so once you do that, you will see a project being created, and inside this project you will see two things: src and java se hyphen 115. That is 15th version of Java is what is associated with this project, and there is a folder called as src. Now src means source. That means whatever code you want to write for your Java project, you have to write it inside src. Okay, now next thing I'm going to do is to create subfolders, right? They are also called as packages. If you heard of packages, packages is nothing but the folders. Okay, I'll go and create the package. Let's say I create a package. I'll say com.vit. Why I'm saying com.vit? It's a standard. If you're working for a company, let's say TCS, you will try to write com.tcs. You write the domain name, for example www.tcs.com. That's how the ID is, right? That's how the address goes. So you reverse it, com.tcs, right? So if you see this is www.vit.com, I've reversed it. I'm saying com.vit. Okay, let's say I'm working in a subdivision of TCS, that is, let's say, Bank of America. So I will say bankofamerica.tcs.com. That will be the URL. So I will reverse it, com.tcs.bankofamerica, right? So this is how, this is the this is the like standard which all the Java projects are being built. This is what they use as a standard. Is it mandatory? No, you can wish to write anything. It will still create the package, because nonetheless it is just a folder, a package. You can name anything, you can put any name to it. It's nothing to do with Java. It is just a package, just a folder. If you go inside a workspace and you open this folder there in your workspace, you will see src and you will see these kind of folders created there. So they are nothing but the folder, nothing else. But I will use the standard, so I will say com.vit, click on finish. A package is created. You can directly put your class file inside src, but again, not advisable. You have to put this inside a package. So the base package I have created here is com.vit. Now next thing I'm going to do is I'll go to new. I can click here, right click on it. By the way, you know how I'm getting these options. You right click on it, you click on new. Now I'm going to add, either I could add a package, one more package inside, or I could simply say class. So I'm choosing to create a class. Now class, we discuss what class is. Class is a prototype, a concept. So let me create my first class, and let's assume I am trying to create a software for calculator. That's a very simple program, and we'll try to, you know try to create a calculator program for this demonstration. Okay, so I'll say the name of my class is calculator. Okay, now here I want to ask me few things: public, package. Don't mess this, just keep it public. Now here it will ask me, do you want to have public static void main? Let me select it. Let's say I want public static void main there. Why we need it, that I will talk about later. um, or let's not do it for now, maybe we'll do it for other class. You want constructors, you can create constructors. You want to inherit this from abstract methods, you can do that. Now if you select these, it will just add few more keywords to your class files, nothing else. But if you do not sure what it is, don't touch them, leave it as it is. Just create a calculator, click on finish. All it will do is to create a file. The file name will be calculator.java, and it will create a file here, right? So it is tagging the first line of this class is packaged com.vit, which represents that this class is a part of a package or a folder called as com.vit. Now all class belongs to a folder, right? There cannot be a class, there cannot be a file which is, let's say, calculator.java. There cannot be anything which is not there, which is not inside any folder. It has to be part of a folder structure, and whatever that folder structure the file is part of will be marked at the top, the first step, first line of calculator.java. Then you say public class calculator. Now this means, the public means, this is called as access modifiers, which means the class is accessible from everywhere, from within the project, not, of course, not from outside, but all the classes from anywhere which is within this project can access this. I can choose, there are different access modifiers available: public, private, protected, default. There are actually four, and they can be applied with classes, variables, and methods. Okay. And don't worry, we'll make use of them later, but by default, let's try to make your classes as public, otherwise you will face some issue in the beginning of accessibility, which we don't want while learning, at least. Okay, so we'll understand when to use public, when to use private, when to use protected, when to use default. We'll try to understand it later, but for now just keep it as it is. Now, as I told you, a class can have two things, which is variables. We also call
Sorry,
them,
Akash.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
carry on.
Can you please enlarge the font size, because I'm
Oh,
not
I
able to. We are seeing blur images. Oh, fine.
yeah, yeah, I
Thank you.
understand. I've done it.
Fine,
Can
no
you see it
problem.
now? Can you see it now better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So class can have two things: attributes, also called as variables, and second is methods, also called as behaviors. Okay, I don't know if the spelling is right. Never mind. Now, what is attributes? Attributes is the characteristics of the class. Now, I'll not go into very philosophical definition of what class is and how it is structured. Let's keep things simple. We want to create calculator program. A calculator program, or any calculator program will have some operations. What kind of operations a calculator program would have? Let's try to jot it down. We will have addition, isn't it? We will have subtraction. We will have multiplication, right? Of course, it could have more, but we'll only focus on these three for now. Okay, so it could have addition, it could have subtraction, it could have multiplication. Of course, let's take division also. 4 is a good number. I like even numbers. So 4 operations we have: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Now these 4 operations is what I think is behaviors, should be the behaviors of the class calculator. That's how basically this is the first step of any program. Even the developers, when they start programming, they first think about class. Then think about class. Class is nothing but an entity or a noun, and they create a class using that noun. Once they create it, then they think of what are the operations which could have in that class, what this class should be doing, operations, what are the behaviors. These are also called as behaviors. So because I'm using calculator program, I'm saying, okay, calculator can have these 4 operations or behaviors or methods: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Now, second thing is, they should add, subtract, multiply, divide, but what? Right, so we need to have something which could be used to add, right? Some entities which will be subtracted, something which will be multiplied, something which we should, one entity should divide another entity, right? So we need to pass this information as well, because addition requires two arguments. So we are naming them as arguments. So addition, to add something, you need two numbers, isn't it? Or two or more numbers. So the idea is, what I'm trying to do next is to create those variables which could be set. You can set the values in those variables, and those variables can actually be manipulated using these methods and behaviors. So I'll say int a, then I'll say int b, then I'll say int result. So I've created three variables. Now let me explain what these are. These are variables, but in Java, it is you have to define the type of the object, right? Sorry, type of the object or type of the variable. You cannot just write a. You have to tell that this a is a variable which will hold an integer value. What are the other data types? String, boolean, float, long. So they're different. Around 8 primitive data types are there, but you can create your own classes, and that also becomes a data type, which we will see later. Okay, when we create an object of it, then you will know that a variable can be created which will hold an object of a specific class. But for now, let's keep it simple. We'll say int a, int b, and int result. Next, what we're going to do is create something called as constructor. By the way, guys, this is what you guys also have to do when you start this. So the sequence I am following and the methods I am creating, try to follow the same sequence. Now I'm going to create a constructor. Now what is a constructor? Constructor is a special kind of method, but this method doesn't have a written type, but it it actually has the same name as the class name. Okay, so I'll say public calculator. This becomes my constructor. Okay, so in Java, you always will have one default constructor for sure, and the idea is whenever the object is created, this constructors will always will be called first. The idea of a constructor is that once you create the object, if you want to initialize the class with some data, some prerequisite data, then you will use constructor, because it will always will be called whenever you create an object of that class. Okay, so I am saying public calculator, this is nothing but a default constructor, but there are also concept of parameterized constructor, which I'm going to show in a while. But let me define how to create methods, because what you see right now is a standard way of creating methods. Let me also create the definition of addition, right? So I'll say public void add. Let me shorten the name. I've created a method called as public void add. This means public means it could be accessible from everywhere. Void represents what it will return, is the method name. This represents the argument. Right now, void means add doesn't return anything and it doesn't accept any arguments. Now I have the option to design my methods and class in many ways. I'm choosing just one of the way, and I'll try to show you other way of doing that as well. So let me just quickly create all these classes. Public void subtraction. Then I'll say multiply and divide. Okay, so I have 4 methods, but these methods are doing nothing right now, but I need to create my class in a way so that they do something. Okay, so the first way of doing it, the first way by which I could create my classes, I will simply say, okay, I want to add 2 numbers. So I'll say I want to add int a and int b. Then I'll say I want to add these values. So I'll say I want to do a result. Int result is equal to a plus b. Then I want to say I want to return this as well. So I'll say return result. Okay, now this is one way of doing it. Now here I am trying to return a value out of this method, but I have said I'm returning nothing. That's why it's giving me error. That means it's saying error is there. When it happens, you have to hover on that line. It will tell you void method cannot return a value. That means saying you're trying to return something, but it's marked as void. So change this. So I'll say int, and error goes away. Now when I do this, I really don't need this and I don't need this, because I'm just passing the value here as an argument. I'm passing two values to method called as add. I'm passing a and b to it. It is adding it inside the method and it is returning the value. So I don't need this and this. I just don't need these things. Let me just quickly show you how to use this, and then we'll try to refactor it. I'll say int a, int b here as well. Okay. Okay, so there are four operations I have. I don't need this. I just want to execute. So I've created a very simple, very simple calculator program. I want to run this program. If I right click on this, click on run, I won't get anything. No option to run it. Just run on server doesn't mean anything. I need to have an option called as run on Java or Java run, something like that. I'm not getting anything. Why? Because class in itself is nothing. Class in itself can do nothing, because if you remember, I was talking about this slide. When you say car, what is a car? Car doesn't do anything. Car cannot run. A Maruti 800 can run, right? You can drive Maruti 800, but you cannot drive a car. So that's the difference. Car is just a concept. It cannot it has no existence of its own unless you create an object out of it. So if I want to invoke these methods, I need to create an object of class calculator. Where I would do it, let me create another class called as runner, and here I will use public static void main. What public static void main is? This method is used as a starting point for any Java program. Without this, your program cannot run, because when Java looks at your code and tries to find or try to execute it, it first try to locate where is the main method. If it finds main method, only then it can start executing your code. Otherwise it will say I can't run it. So I have public static void main here. Now I'll start the object creation process. So how to create an object? Very simple. You call calculator, you write the name calculator, you create the object name, then you say new calculator. It will show you some error. If it shows you, then you have to click here. It will tell you what it is. Right now it's automatically, because I am inside the same package, I didn't find any error. But if you try to do this in multiple package, you might get some error to import the class. When it happens, you have to click here, and then it will give you option to import the class. If you didn't get what I just said, forget, it's okay. Right now just focus on the basic stuff. Once I say calculator calc equal to new calculator, that means I have created the object. How to create an object? This is my variable name. This is the name of the class. As I said in Java, you always have to have something or a data specified before you actually create a variable. So in this case, calc here is an object or a variable of type calculator, just like a was a variable of type integer. The same way, calc is an object of type calculator, and I'm using a new keyword. New keyword is always used in Java or in any other programming language for creation of new object. So once I do that, I got a new object, and then once I got an object, I can do a dot. I can get the methods, and I can use these methods to actually do what? To actually execute the operations. And I want to add it. If I want to add, I will pass in the number here. I can do it for all. I can say, let me do a subtraction for 4 and 6. Calc dot multiply. I'll say I want to add multiply 2 with 3. Once I do that, if I try and do a right click here, if I do run as, if you see, I'm getting Java application. So only on the class which has main method you will get this Java application. Once I do, you find this, you click on Java application, you will get uh, right. So what happened right now, it executed the code, but you didn't see anything because it just executed the code. You're not instructing your code to give the information back to you, right? So if you remember, I have written this and I'm returning the variable, but I'm not storing it anywhere. I'm just doing the operation. It will return the result, but I'm not capturing it anywhere, right? So I also have to capture these results and display them. To do that, I need to say integer result, or rather I should simply say here int result. Then I will say result is equal to, that means I will uh, the result of the operation will be stored in this variable. Then I would also like to print it. To print it, I will use command system.out.println. This is the command you use for printing the output of anything, any expression. So I'll say addition result is this, and I will use this everywhere, here, here, and here. And I'll say subtraction result, I'll say multiply result. Okay, now if I go and run it, let's see what happens now. So if I go and run this, I get a result. Okay, I cannot enlarge it, sorry, but the result is this. I'll just print it result here so that you can actually see it. This is the result, this is the output of the program. This is how you comment it. So I'll just comment this program here. So this is actually the result is 8, result is 8. Okay, but I don't, okay, I made a mistake. I have to do this every time. I have to capture it, rewrite the values. Now if I run it again, Java application, right, I get a good result now. Let's see if the result is right. So for addition I'm getting 8, for this I'm getting -2, and for multiply I'm getting, oh, multiply is not right, it shouldn't be 5. Why it's 5? Because I have a bug in the code, that's why it was 5. Okay, so unfortunately I have to run it again to show you it returns the right result, and this time it should be right. This is a result. Okay, now quickly let's look at another way of doing the same thing. Instead of passing the values here, let's do it in a different way, just slightly different way. So for that I'll go and create another calculator program. I'll just make a copy of it. I'll say using constructor. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of these variables. So I'm just telling you just another way of doing the same thing. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll say, I'm, as you know, I when I do it, right, as you know, when I create the object, the constructor will be automatically called. That's what we discussed earlier, that when I go and create the object of something, the constructor will automatically will be called. If you don't believe me, let me give you an example of it. System dot out dot print ln I oops I'm called. Okay, now if I run this runner program, you won't see any constructor call here, right? But when I run this, you will always see this output. That means I am called. That means the constructor always gets called when you create the object. Okay, so I'm going to leverage this functionality to initialize my variables so that I don't have to pass the information variable details in every method call. I will just send it once, and then it will do the operations. So that's what I'm trying to do now, to tell you how many different ways of using or initializing the class and initializing the variables. So one way of this, that I don't make use of these things, I'll just directly pass it here. Second way is I'll go and create the constructor like this. Then I'm going to make this constructor a parameterized constructor, because eventually this is also a specific, sorry, a special kind of method. So I'll say int a comma int b. Then I'll say this dot a is equal to a, this dot b is equal to b. By this I'm trying to say whatever I'm sending here should be saved in the this means current class object. So this dot a represents this object, this variable, and this will get saved to b. This is not mandatory. I can say x and y, and I could simply, what I could have said, I could have said a is equal to x and b is equal to y. This is also fine. Why I have to use this here? Because I was using the same name, and then Java compiler will be confused what you want to say when you say when you want to say a is equal to a and b is equal to b, right? There will be confusion. So to mention in a right way, I have to write this, and it's always better to indicate. This will actually readability perspective, it's also better to read that this, when I say this dot b, it represents the variable of the class. Next is I will remove these values from here. So I'll just remove these values from here. I'll simply say result, and I also not return anything. I'll simply say this. I'll say this and void. By the way, guys, if you have questions, please ask. I'm just going non-speed without oh wait, okay, sorry guys. uh yeah, so if you have any questions, please interrupt me and ask. All right, so let me just quickly change these things. All right, so I now have a very different kind of class. It essentially does the same thing, but it has a different structure. In this one, it was, I was creating the methods and directly sending arguments here and making use of them. Second is I'm doing this. Which one is better? No, both are same. Doesn't matter. For this simple example, doesn't matter how you want to do it. You can do it in your own way. Uh, but at some level, at some advanced level, this approach is always better. That you define the attributes and then you define the operations, and you make use of operations to do something with the values of that class. So this is always advisable. Putting this into contrast, this is not considered a very good approach, but initially, as I said, both doesn't matter, both will do the same thing. So in this example, how we're going to use this now, and I'll go to runner again, and I will say different version of the class. Okay, then I will do what? I will create the object of calculator. I'll create the object of this class. Okay, so I'll just simply say this. I'll say calc1 is equal to, and I'll use the new keyword. Okay, now when I do that, I get an error, right? So whenever you get an error, you have to hover on top of it and it will tell you what it is. Or you can also click on this bulb symbol, click here, and it will tell you what it is, right? So here what's telling you? Here it's telling me that the constructor is undefined. Okay, so what it's trying to say is add arguments to match calculator using constructor. If you notice, if I go inside, I don't have a default constructor. I have a constructor which accepts two arguments. Okay, so whenever I go and create the object of such class who has this kind of constructor which accepts two arguments, I will get an error if I'm not passing anything there, right? There is one more explanation here. If I just go and quickly do this, I remove this and I'll remove this. Now when I go to runner, the error is gone. Why? Because now while creating it, it will find a default constructor which is always by default will be called. But if I don't add this, if I remove this, then to initialize this class, it will definitely need to call this constructor, and this constructor requires two arguments. And that's the reason I got this error here, and I need to pass two values. Okay, so if I go and add a value, so previously I was sending values here, now I am sending values to the constructor itself here. Okay, once I do this, then I don't have to pass the information in my method calls. I can just directly call them. Where is my subtraction? uh where is my subtraction? Okay, this one, calc1 dot multiply. Okay, let me just call these three. Now if I call this, what will happen? Nothing, because the same problem, because it will do the operation but I'm not returning it. Not neither I am printing result anywhere. So what I'll do next is I will go and create a print method here, which is public void, I'll say print result, and here I will simply say system dot out dot print ln result. Result is this one. Okay, and then I simply say calc1 dot print result, and that's it. So when I actually go and run this, let's see what happens. So when I run this one now, uh okay, so I have to call this for all the operations, isn't it? Because all the operations are happening independently, so I have to call this every time I'm doing some operations. Okay, so if I run this again, rather I will just have to put some markers here. Give me a minute. Print ln. Okay, so if I go and run this now, run as Java application, now I get this result. Now output becomes this. So this is the outcome when I use this kind of structure. Now here you might argue, oh, but it is always doing the same thing. It is always adding two numbers which I have passed it, and it is doing addition, subtraction, multiplication for only these two numbers. But here we had the liberty to pass different numbers. I mean, you can do it here also, but in a slightly different manner. But because if you want to do this you want to have this kind of flexibility, then you need to create the objects for all of them. So you'll say calc add, and I will say calc add print result. This will be my addition. Okay, I'll say calc subtraction, and I can call the subtraction here. Then multiplication here, let me remove this one, let me mark it as multiply. I'll put this here, and this is my subtraction, subtraction, subtraction. Now you have the liberty to pass whatever number you want to pass it. Okay, and if I run this again, then you will get the result which we desired. So we'll say run this, and now you got the result again in this format. Okay, so now I have told you what I have told you, two ways of doing it. One way is this, second way is this. Okay, guys. Now I like to open the floor for questions because you guys have been silent all along. So I really want you guys to come up and ask, because of course there I've told many things, and whoever said no, I you should be having a lot of questions, and I'm dying to answer them.
Actually, Akash, I have one question.
Yeah, carry on.
If I want to create any project or some program, so how can I understand means where I have to given means where I have to given input for the output.
Input or the output, right? Okay. So don't worry about where to give input, where to give output. This is something different. No one gives input from, no one asks input from a user. We are not creating an application. We are creating a utility. Here,
Okay,
you don't have to ask user enter information and then user will enter and do. This is not, we are not trying to do that. You can do it. There's a class called a scanner, and you
mm,
can use scanner class to ask user to insert a value, but that's of no use. So we could avoid doing that.
okay,
Our purpose of this is to create classes and create methods and all those things. We don't want to create an actual calculator.
okay,
However, if you really want to try doing that, you can try using this scanner class. Scanner
okay,
class is used to take input from the user. Now, let's say there is a possibility you want to do something. For example, I'm not telling you that, but you still want to do that. So be my guest. Please explore how to do that. How, let's say you don't, because you don't know where to start from, right? So that's where Google comes into picture. You have to go to Google, you have to write how to send, how to ask uh, for input in Java program, something like that. Okay, it will tell you different ways. So as I told you, there is a way, scanner as scanner class. You can go here and you can use this. You can just come here, you can, okay, this is how it is, this is how it is done. So you just can simply do this, copy this much and paste it here. Okay, it will give you some error. Go here, click on import, this one, import java.util. Okay, how do you know which one to select? Because you see import java.util here, that's what
okay,
you should be seeing here. Okay, so whenever
yeah,
you see such kind of imports required, you go here, you first say where are you copying it. You'll say, okay, I am want to do this. What is the import here? Java.util. So you come here, you click this, then you select java.util, because you will see a lot of others, and then if you select this one, the error will still there, then a lot of different kind of issues happen. So better to check what kind of imports are there and select the right import. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, but don't spend too much time doing this. I mean, I take my words back. Spend time in experimenting on your own as well, and when those experiments doesn't work, you let me know. You put that into the screen in the group, ask me this is not working. If it is really very irrelevant, I would say don't do it, don't waste time there. But it's relevant, I will be happy to help. In the beginning, everything you try to do, everything you try to experiment, everything will be relevant. So try to experiment as much as possible. All right, guys, what else? All right. uh it's okay if you are not able to find any questions now.
Akash, one question. This
Yes,
is
Srinivas.
Srinivas.
Yes,
Yeah.
Srinivas.
Yeah. Henceforth, we will follow these particular specific rules only, like constructor in different folder and runner in different class and Java calculator Java. This type of structure we will follow henceforth, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Or
Because
it
we are
is
not.
as it is in
Yes, Srinivas, carry on.
as
Sorry.
per yeah, as per the industrial standard that we are following, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay.
So we are not only learning Java and classes and objects, we are also need to learn the right practice, right standards to write code. Right. So that is also we need to learn from the very beginning. It should not happen that you learn some wrong practices by putting things here and there, and then you are learning new things to create the program in the right standard. So like it's a double effort. While
Yeah.
you learn Java, you also need to learn standards. What is the right way to do it?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And however, when we actually start our framework, no one uses public static void main. Well, public static void main is just out of the window, thrown out of the window. No one uses that. In no good Java program, it's never been used. For example, if you see my IntelliJ, the framework which you're going to create later on, there's no Java, and there's no public static void main there, because we use advanced frameworks which public static void main is already handled internally. You don't have to actually write it anywhere. Okay, so if you go into these classes, you won't find anything. You will not find any public static void main anywhere inside any of these classes, because it's not there. We use frameworks to handle or trigger our execution. Okay. Okay. Anything else, guys, before we call it a day? All right. So final, my concluding remarks on this is this: you guys have to install JDK, install Java, Eclipse, create your first class, create your class. You don't have you can try both. You can first try doing this, it gives you practice. You can try using this, it gives you practice, and then you go and add more operations, more complex operations. Okay. If I'm telling you to do A, you also doesn't mean that you have to do A only. You can go till Z. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is, don't just say what Akash is telling, I'll do only that much, and that's end of story. It's not going to help you guys. Okay, what I'm going to cover, maybe it's just 20% of your, or what I'm going to contribute in just 10%. Rest, from 10% till 60%, 70%, when you actually can say, yeah, I understand it now. It is a long journey which you have to take care of on your own, which you have to walk on your own. So I can give you examples, I can give you assignments, but try to do more on your own. So I have told you this example. You try to create more complex operations here. So add, subtraction, multiplication, division. Think of more exponential, logarithm, right? Log values, square roots, right? Try to add these operations also in this. Then try to think of, how will I add three numbers? How will I add four numbers? How will I add five numbers? How will I multiply five numbers if I want to? Right. So how will you go, guys will go and do that, is also you should try it. We'll see to it later. We'll try to do that later as well, in the class. Few of the examples we'll try to do in the class also, but you also need to try it on your own. So I will create some list of assignments around calculator only, which you have to do in your week, and end of the week you guys have to actually demonstrate that, few of you. Okay. It will be on voluntary basis, of course. I'll not enforce this. All right, guys, if there's nothing else, then I think we could wind up the call for today. I think after today, we will have a WhatsApp group where we can communicate, and whatever communication, whatever thing which you want to ask me or communicate, that's the place you should be putting in your comments and messages. All right, guys, see you. Good night. See you next.
Right.
Bye.